All right, everybody, how you doing? I'm Anthony,
I'm Eric.
and this is Total Football Talk, Week 9 edition here. Couple things to talk about here. If you're a Ram fan, you're no longer undefeated. You have suffered a defeat at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. We're going to open with this one. I want to say a couple things on this, and then I'll let Eric say a couple things on this, and then I'll kind of say my parting thought on this. First of all, it was a great game. Defense was nowhere to be found on either side of the ball. Peters has been under a lot of criticism for how badly he got burned by Michael Thomas, and maybe some of that's fair. I don't know if all of that is fair. You can't cover Saint wide receivers for 3-4 seconds. And there were times the Rams got zero pressure on Drew Brees. He was just sitting back there baking cookies. This defensive meltdown, and there's no other way to call it, really the finger belongs to be pointed in a lot of different places. Maybe credit needs to be given to the Saints' offensive line. When you don't get the interior pressure, you don't get the backside pressure, you got some problems, especially against a team as talented as Drew Brees. The Rams continue to struggle with the running game. This has been a problem that's plagued them since last year, and I think the Saints did a really good job of exploiting it. I heard something earlier, and this is my last thought, and then I'll go to you, Eric. I heard some comments earlier that these two teams really don't like each other. I think it's funny when I hear people talk like that because they clearly don't know Ram history, NFC West history, and they clearly don't know Ram Saint history. Okay? No, these two teams do not like each other. They have never liked each other. The Rams have pwned New Orleans for decades, but New Orleans has had those WTF wins that have been demoralizing to the Rams. In 1979, they beat them to knock them down from 10-6 to 9-7. The Saints were 8-8 that year. Had the Rams not beaten Minnesota the week before, New Orleans wins the division, right? That's less shocking than in 1981 when the Rams were kind of getting on a roll and then New Orleans beat them and the Rams spiraled out of control. 86 rather. The Rams lose a game 6-0 in New Orleans when they were inferior in comparison. In 1987, the Saints sweep the Rams, absolutely obliterate them, and in one of their losses, really spiraled them into another 3-game losing streak, which was a home loss, or a 4-game losing streak. So when you look at this, yeah, these two teams don't like each other because there's history there. There's history there that we're all aware of if we're Ram fans, and not necessarily if you're Saint fans. Now, I could mention 2000. I could mention 2001 where the Saints were our first defeat that year as well. We were 6-0. They beat us and ended up going 6-1. But I want to look more at this year. That preseason game, not good. The cell phone incident, I thought was funny, and I thought was an homage to Joe Horn and turned out to be an homage to Joe Horn. But that clearly rubbed a lot of the Ram players a little bit raw. Good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know where I stand on that. I wasn't as upset as some of the players were, but then again, I wasn't playing the game. And it definitely was another level of disrespecting the Rams that the Saints have already demonstrated going back to the preseason game, as I mentioned before. But look, I'm going to say this, Eric, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. I think the Saints are a great football team, but I don't think the Saints beat the Rams. I think the Rams beat themselves, and I'll talk about why that is in a minute. I think these were even teams, and the Rams are the ones that made the mistakes, both coaching and play, on the field, and the Saints didn't. And when you do that, you lose by 10. Go, E.
I'll wholeheartedly disagree with you on that last point that the Rams beat themselves. Listen, the Rams took points off the board when they needed to put points on the board, and that was the fake field goal. Sure, missed field goals happen. It happens to the best of everybody, okay? Nobody's perfect. So maybe they lose by 7 instead of 10. But the Saints clearly outplayed the Rams on offense. You need to stop a wide receiver from gaining 211 yards throughout the whole game. Now, if the celebration hurt you a little bit, well, don't let him get behind your defense and don't let him go for 211 yards. It's that simple. But wait, there is more. The Rams secondary was nowhere to be found. Drew Brees had a field day. I had a feeling Drew Brees was going to have a good day because I've seen the Rams defense quite a bit this year. And I'm not saying they're soft, but they just have to tighten up the screws a little bit here and a little bit there. and they could be a dominant defense like they were last year. I don't see it though. I'm not sure if Wade Phillips can get them to that. I think the Rams think that they can outscore everybody, and they tried to with New Orleans, and it didn't work. The only other team that's going to be able to put up points on them and try to outscore them is Kansas City, which is coming up in 2 weeks. Okay? So, defense showed up 2 plays. Mark Ingram fumble and the Jared Goff interception. That was pretty much it. It's hard. It's really hard for a team to go into the Superdome against one of the best quarterbacks to have ever played the game in Drew Brees. And, he's a record holder for a lot of passing records for a reason. Because that's what he does. But he's got another dimension. When he's throwing for 211 yards to Michael Thomas, there's Alvin Kamara who's like, hey, let me run the ball. Because now they're expecting pass, and I'm going to run it down your throat. That's what Kamara did. Gurley had a good game. It wasn't probably as good as he hoped. But, you know what? That's what happens when you lose a game. Listen, you guys lost. It's over with. Don't worry about the perfect record anymore. I think a loss is going to be good for the Rams. I think it's going to rejuvenate them. And I also think that they were hoping maybe that the bye week would come a little bit sooner this season, especially when they knew going into the season, hey, we're going to build off of last year. We'd like a bye week maybe closer to the middle of the season than anything, because I think that's what they're waiting for right now. They just want to get to that bye week, but I hope it doesn't affect their performances throughout the next couple of games against the Seahawks and against the Chiefs. Because if the Seahawks can sneak up on them, the Chiefs can beat them. But if they shore up everything and tweak their defense, they'll be fine. It's just a loss. You chalk it up as a loss. Now New Orleans and the Rams each have a loss. They'll be fighting for first place. I don't expect the Saints to take the number 1 seed and run with it, especially with 2 of the last 3 weeks being against Carolina. And you keep hearing me say that, just like you keep hearing me say that the Falcons secondary stinks. Maybe not this past week, but it does. So, just look forward ahead to a division game, which is definitely well needed.
So I'm going to tell you why you're wrong and why the Rams did lose this game and the Saints didn't necessarily take it from them. First of all, I agree with just about everything you said, right? Lost the loss, put it behind you, move on. Going undefeated is very rare if it ever happens, and I know it has on 2 occasions, at least regular season-wise, so I'm not so much concerned about that. But you got to look at the dynamics of the situation. The Saint players, after that Mark Ingram fumble, I was watching the Saints sidelines. They were down. They had conceded the fact that the Rams at that moment were probably going to win the game. And going for a fake field goal, at that point, I will reiterate this, my idol growing up, when I was a kid, I had friends that wanted to grow up and be like Eric Dickerson, friends that wanted to grow up and be like Walter Payton, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. I wanted to be Joe Gibbs. And Joe Gibbs is famous for saying, I don't care if I have 4th and inches at the half-inch line of the other team's goal line. And I've got John Riggins and the Hogs. In the first half, I'm kicking the field goal. Because you take the points as they come to you in the first half, so you don't have to chase points in the second. The Rams kick a field goal there. They're up 38-35 at the end of the game. The Saints kick that field goal to tie the game. That means Todd Gurley's now a factor in the running game again, and the Rams aren't playing from behind that late. The second mistake that he made that cost his team the game was in the 4th quarter. Sean McVay punted when he should have gone for it. I'm going to explain why I say that in a minute. First of all, you take the points in the first half. At that moment, you had no reason not to trust your defense. They just got you a turnover. Reward them with points and take the field. I really think that changes the dynamics of the game. I don't know that the Saints go up and score a touchdown on the next drive. I really don't believe they do. I believe that the Saints at that point start pressing a little bit and they maybe make a mistake. Not necessarily a turnover, but maybe a bad pass, maybe a missed block, and they have to punt again, and then it's ball game back on, okay? In the 4th quarter, you had no reason at that point to trust your defense. You'd given up 38 points as it was. The Saints were getting hot all over again. You had come back and taken that lead, and Brees clearly got hot again on that last drive to put them up by 3. You have to go for it on 4th and 6. I don't care. Yes, the Saints are going to end up scoring if you don't get it. But then you're down 10 with 3.5 minutes to go instead of being, or 4.5 minutes to go instead of being down 10 with, 2.5 minutes to go. Or maybe your defense rises up because they realize, hey, our backs are up against it, hold the Saints to a field goal, and it's a 1-score game. They're not going to throw the same pattern on that side of the 40 that they threw on the other side of the 40 to Michael Thomas. So really for me, McVay lost this game. McVay really, look, he's a young guy. I'm not putting him on blast for this. He's a young guy. Maybe he bought into the hype that this was going to be, you have to score in every possession because the Saints are just that good, and he didn't trust his team and his formula that he has in play, or maybe he got caught up in the moment. He's a young coach. These mistakes are going to happen, okay? But to me, the first and fourth quarter bookended really a 20-point swing, or at least a 13-point swing. So, yeah, I'm going to put the finger on McVay on that one and say we gave him the friggin' game. Because the worst part about that 4th down fake field goal is that we got the first down. We clearly...
Yeah, how was that not overturned?
I have no idea. But that's the risk you take when you go for it on 4th down. It's then up to the discretion of the ref. We got the first down. That was clear. But you can't rely on the officiating to decide that for you. You take the points while they're on the board. I thought that was a horrible no overturn. I mean,
it wasn't a bad call because in theory it worked, but when it's challenged and Hector's clearly reaching the ball past the first down marker and his knee isn't even down yet, and they're like, oh, there's no substantial evidence. Well, maybe you should start piecing together different vantage points, okay?
Like you do for the Patriots.
A little bit longer, but you got to get the call right. That's what you do replay for. To get the call right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a terrible call. It was a terrible call. But I'm not so delusional. And look, maybe that cost the Rams the game because they get that first down, maybe they score. But I don't know. The bottom line is, I know you kick the field goal, you make the field goal. I mean, with Zuerlein, you're almost automatic.
Not the second time.
Well, that's the other point that I was going to make. That's another 3 points that was off the board. Right? I don't know why Zuerlein missed. There's no reason to miss in a dome in a controlled environment, and we needed him. That was a big kick that he didn't show up on. So, I'm a little upset with Greg the Leg on that one. But again, that's why I say, Eric.
You are semi-nitpicking with that because no field goal kicker is perfect.
No, but that again, Eric, is why I say the Rams lost the game. The Saints didn't beat us. You take that call, you take that missed kick, you take the 4th down decision to punt, you put that all together, and you know as well as I do, if any of those go the other way, it's a completely different outcome.
Yeah, but you also play the game differently if that happens.
Maybe. But the bottom line is...
You just don't go back in time, change something, and not expect anything else to change, because there's a butterfly effect.
Well, there is. For example, I still think the Rams have to come from behind. I still think the Rams go for 2 if Greg makes that second field goal. Like, none of that changes because the Rams were down, I think at the time, 28-14. So all that kick does is make it 28-17. Then the Saints score again to make it 35-17. You're still in a position where you need the 21-point fourth quarter to go up 3 in case the Saints get hot again. Right? So I don't think any of that dynamic necessarily changes. Okay? And I believe that wholeheartedly. But now if you piece together the field goal attempt instead of going for it and the second field goal, now you're right. Now you put those things together and maybe the 4th down mistake doesn't even happen because either the Rams, like you said, it's a completely different game. I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just saying there were spots in this game where the Rams had a moment to seize the opportunity and they messed up, not the Saints making a great play. Okay? I'm taking nothing away from New Orleans. They won this game. The Rams lost. I know LT said that he feels good about the loss because, in hindsight, I don't feel good about this loss. I never like it when a team loses on the road to an opponent and it's self-inflicted. That's number one. Number two, I'm not okay with this loss because now from now until the end of the year, I am going to have to hear why the Rams are irrelevant. And it's all going to be about the Saints and Drew Brees and the Saints and the Saints and the Saints and the Saints. And it's just another mark against the Rams this year. That's from a selfish standpoint. In a reality standpoint,
just beat them at the Coliseum in the playoffs.
Right.
You don't have to worry about it.
Right. At the end of the day, I still believe this is the Super Bowl champion of 2018. I believe that. So now it's a matter of how does the road unfold from here? I said at the beginning of the year the Rams are going to go 13-3. This was a game I had the Rams winning. Okay? They lost it. I still have the Bears at the end of the year as a loss. And according to my formula, the Rams still have one game that they can screw up somewhere along the way and still accomplish what I thought they would accomplish this year. And I, unlike the experts, do believe the Rams can go on the road and win, no matter the stadium. And that includes the Louisiana Superdome. So we'll see how it unfolds. It's a tough one, but you got to give credit where credit's due. You called the score, just flipped the result. I think you said 45-38.
Yeah.
So.
45-38. So I was 3 points off and flipped the teams.
So let's jump into the Bears and Bills. I mean, I'm not going to say much. I'm going to let you talk on this one, Eric, and then I got to get up and check something real quick. But I'm just going to say this really quick. This is a game the Bears should have won, and they should have won big, and they did. And I think that should be taken more seriously than people are giving it kudos for. It's one thing to be favored to win big. It's another thing to then actually win big. And I think the Bears made a statement that when you can beat the teams you're supposed to beat, just ask the Redskins, who didn't accomplish that this week. When you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, then that makes you that much more dangerous against the teams you're not supposed to beat, because now you're a threat. Because now it doesn't matter if you win those games, right? If you lose the games you're supposed to win. But the Bears are winning the games they're supposed to win. And if they can steal some games that they're not supposed to win, I think winning this division, or at least making a wild card, becomes a very real possibility. I'll let you go. I'm going to step out for a second.
Yeah, as far as the Bears-Bills game, basically the defense showed up when they had to. It took them 9 weeks to allow a rushing touchdown, and now that trivia question is who was the person who rushed for that touchdown, and that answer is Nathan Peterman. I mean, granted, it was toward the end of the game, and the Bills hadn't scored a touchdown in 39 possessions, but you know what? You want to do that for pride. You want to do that and say, hey, let's keep that streak going. Let the next seed do. Let's not happen to us. But hell, streaks are meant to be broken. So all in all, the Bears played a really sound game. Offense could have been a little bit more on point. Again, Trubisky missed a couple of easy throws, and he had one bad interception. But the Bears did not allow Buffalo to even stay in this game or even remotely make a comeback. It was 0-0 in the first quarter, and then the Bears put up 28 points in the second quarter. 2 of them on defensive touchdowns. I mean, I don't know what Peterman was looking at, who he thought he was throwing to. One was a bad interception, and then one was a tipped interception by Leonard Floyd to return for touchdown, and then the Bears just ripped the ball out of the receiver's hands for another touchdown by Eddie Jackson. So I don't know what else more to put onto this game except the Bears won a game that they had to win, that they should have won, that they probably could have won this game maybe with their eyes closed. There was no Khalil Mack. There was no Allen Robinson. I have been saying for 2 weeks that these were 2 perfect games for them to sit. And you know what? When Robinson and Mack come back, man, they're coming back against 3 teams that are division opponents, twice against the Lions and the Vikings sandwich in between. So if they're rip-roaring ready to go, watch out Matt Stafford and watch out Kirk Cousins, because it's going to be a long day while you run for your life. Yeah, absolutely. Tampa Bay at Carolina, to me, I'm actually more impressed with Tampa Bay than I am with Carolina here. Carolina had a big lead, and then they blew it. But to give them credit, they took the lead back, and I think that that's the mark of a really good team. We're going to get to the Thursday night game here in a minute. I'm actually picking Pittsburgh over Carolina only because Pittsburgh's home. But I really think for me, that's a benchmark. Oh, look who's coming aboard the bandwagon.
That's a benchmark game for me for Carolina. If Carolina wins that game in Pittsburgh, I'm going to tell you right now, the entire landscape of the NFC may change. Because I think the Panthers are a very real threat to my Rams. If they're able to go into an atmosphere like Pittsburgh and pull out a dub, suddenly LA is not so tough of a place to play. And I mean that with all due respect. So, but this was an interesting game in the sense that it was a game they needed to win. It was a game they should have won, and it was a game they darn near lost. But give credit where credit's due. Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, and you better make sure that hand grenades is somebody you don't like, right? So for me, it's, I think, a referendum that, you know, the Buccaneers are a tough team to beat, but the Panthers have proven that, you know what, even if we're not playing, you know, even if we have a mental lapse mid-game, we're good enough to recover, which is what a lot of good teams can do, like the Rams, and not a lot of bad teams. Really quick, I want to go back to the Ram game. I'm sorry I'm doing this, but I have a question for you, Eric. So I didn't ask you this, and I'll answer this question on my own here in a minute. But in reference to the Ram game, were you more impressed with the Saints getting the victory, the Rams having the comeback, or both?
You know, if I put those two teams together and look at who I see on each other's defense, obviously I give the Rams a little bit more because of the names that they have on defense. That I thought the Rams would come out of this with a big defensive stop. And they had. They actually had the Saints punt 2 or 3 times in a row. I believe it was late in the second half or
third quarter.
Late in the second quarter or third quarter.
Third quarter, yeah.
And I was like, okay, here come the Rams. And I'm like, they're gonna make this comeback really interesting. And you know, my whole 45-38 prediction not far off. And and as I kept watching, you know, I was wondering what defense was going to step up. And as soon as Hecker punted with about 4.5 minutes to go, I told myself, the Rams are getting the ball back.
Yeah.
And there are certain times in the game where you're watching at home, and I don't know why people can't see this on the sidelines, and they go up to the head coach and say, don't punt. You won't get the ball back. You have to know who is the quarterback on the other side. Would you ever punt the ball back to Joe Montana?
No. Not if I was behind with 4 minutes to go. Not with that offense.
Right. I mean, would you punt the ball back to Aaron Rodgers? Well, we can already answer that because San Francisco did it.
Yeah.
How about Favre? Well, how many times has he done it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's reverse that. If you have Sam Darnold as the opposite quarterback, you do punt. If you have Baker Mayfield as the opposite quarterback, you punt. You make them beat you.
Yeah.
You don't want a top tier quarterback to be like, hey, cool, we got the ball back. Guess what, boys? They ain't getting the ball again.
Yeah. So answer the question then. Which one were you more impressed with? Rams, Saints, or both?
Both. With the way they handled themselves.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, how can you not be?
Yeah. No, I agree with you entirely. I meant to ask that during the Ram game. So I'm sorry to skim over Carolina, but, you know, I said what I did. Is there anything you want to chime in on that game or no?
Yeah, what a weapon Tampa Bay has in O.J. Howard. They unleashed Adam Humphries in this game, too, who had 82 yards and 8 catches and 2 touchdowns. And a lot of a couple of Carolina's touchdowns were by a guy named Curtis Samuel. One was on a gimmick play where they double reversed. And then Cam Newton also found him in the end zone with a cornerback draped all over his back and somehow came down with it. You know, when you have Christian McCaffrey, Cam Newton doesn't have to be Superman. And when McCaffrey's on, and I actually expect McCaffrey to have a pretty big game on Thursday as well. He's a special talent. You know, they were just able to out-tour Tampa, and I don't think that Fitzpatrick did anything to he didn't do anything to give the job back to Winston. I mean, I know he threw a pick, maybe 2, but I definitely know of 1. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, I think Carolina was up like 35-14. I was like, all right, Tampa's going to make a run, and you know they respond under Fitzpatrick much better than Jameis Winston. And hello, Tampa. I think you need to look at that really closely because there's an option that is coming up that you're going to have to decide on for the fifth year for Jameis Winston and Montana, I don't pick it up.
I don't either. And when your biggest weapon wants to leave, unless Fitzpatrick's the starting quarterback, I think that tells you all you need to know. Okay, Eric, go ahead and cover Kansas City, Cleveland. I'll be right back.
All right, Kansas City, Cleveland. Is there really much to say about this? Well, yeah. I'm gonna start with the bright side on Cleveland. Finally, and Anthony will agree with me, even if he's not listening at this particular moment, he had to go do something that might have been more important. I don't know what that is because we're talking about football. But the Cleveland new regime with Greg Williams and their new coaching staff finally unleashed Duke Johnson Jr. Now, he's not the greatest running back as far as carrying the ball, but man, is he a weapon out of the backfield catching the ball. About time. Learn from that. Use him. He is a weapon that you can use to win games with. Keep doing it. Thank you very much.
So I have a question. There's enough games here now, I think it poses this question. Does Kansas City play down to their competition?
You know, I think there's a case to be made, but let me ask you this. When you're playing games like Kansas City has been playing, do you run up the score? Do you act like the Patriots?
I mean, I don't. And that's why I love Andy Reid. And you could make a case for the Rams that they play down to their opponents, too. Seattle, Denver.
I don't necessarily think that they're playing down to their opponents. And I didn't get anything that I thought that Kansas City was playing down to Cleveland's level because of all the talent that Kansas City had. Listen, they came out, they scored fast and furious, they scored first, they scored a lot. Cleveland kept up with them for about 2.5 quarters. And then Kansas City just unleashed everything else and said, okay, catch up to us again. And they couldn't. So Kansas City could turn it on at any moment.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the team who's got a decent defense who can slow Kansas City down and say, okay, guess what? We're now ahead. You come back, and we're going to pressure you with everything we got so you beat us. Kind of like what the Patriots did, but there was very little defense in that game. That's
true. Yeah, I look, Kansas City is a team for me. I love the heck out of Andy Reid. I've respected that man since his Philly days. Mahomes is a phenomenal quarterback. The Chiefs are a very real threat. I'm not going to be one of those idiots that sit there and go, whoa, when they make the playoffs, though, I'm going to pick everybody else but the Chiefs because playoff experience. Look, I think the Chiefs are built to make a run. And none of us on this show, me or you, really saw that this year. We thought maybe the Chiefs were a year away. I think the Chiefs are playing ahead of schedule. I think the Raiders have really taken a deep step back. And I think this is the Kansas City, San Diego, or Chargers show for a long time, for at least the next 5 years.
Here's the thing with Kansas City. I don't want to hear anything about playoff experience because Mahomes was on the roster last year. He was kicking Alex Smith back up in the playoff game that the Chiefs lost. So he has a taste of it, especially with that game being played at home.
Yeah.
So he knows kind of what to expect. Yes, he wasn't out on the field because Alex Smith was out on the field, but he knows he's brought it in as far as taking everything in on the sideline and preparing in case he had to go in. So he's going to be very well rested and ready.
I want to say one other thing on this game. I want to give a lot of props to Greg Williams, the Browns head coach. He comes into an impossible situation with a reputation that, let's just say, is less than desirable from the millennials and the pussified Americans of today, and really got his team prepared to play an impossible opponent to open with. And I really want to give credit where credit's due because he had, from a coaching standpoint, that was an outstanding performance against insurmountable odds. And the fact that that game was as close as it was, for as long as it was, I think is a credit to how hard these guys are playing for Greg Williams and probably how much these players really like him. If I'm the Browns owner, I'm watching the Ravens very closely, and I'm watching Greg Williams very closely. And by week 17, I'm either going to make a play for John Harbaugh, or I'm going to retain after interviewing people, I'm going to lean towards at least interviewing, if not retaining eventually, Greg Williams. Because I'll be very curious to see how this team performs moving forward. I don't know what you think on that.
He's got a case, but I'm hearing old recycled dog poop names coming up.
Like?
Josh McDaniels, Bruce Arians.
I mean, I don't mind Bruce Arians. He retired and left. He was a phenomenal coach here in Arizona. As somebody who roots for the Browns, I would be ecstatic with Bruce Arians. But I would prefer John Harbaugh. Me personally. All right. Jets at the Dolphins. This game kind of broke down exactly as you said. Low-scoring game. Damn near called the score on this one again, Eric. But we both picked Miami. We both figured Miami would win this game. This was a must-win game for Miami. And they're not done with their must-win games by any means whatsoever. Next week, Miami is at Green Bay. And that's not going to – I'm not going to say who I'm picking, but I would argue that that's another must-win game for Miami if they want to stay relevant in the picture at all. And obviously for Green Bay, you'd have to make the same case. So, credit to the Dolphins for winning a game they should have won. Go.
There is to say about this game, only that as it was a early field goal fest for a while. Darnold threw a pick six. No offense could get going. I saw some highlights of this game, so the footing wasn't terrible. Okay, as they made it out before the game because of all the rain that they had the night before. But again. Miami pulled it out, and they needed a win to keep their slim hopes alive of catching the Patriots.
Baltimore at Pittsburgh. John Harbaugh's days are numbered. The Ravens aren't going anywhere this year. He's going to get the rope. He'll be one of the first coaches fired on Black Monday. And I mean, the Ravens, to me, they played completely uninspired football, and the franchise's future is about to get a lot darker because they're going to lose a quality head coach, and they're going to put in a quarterback who isn't ready, and they're going to lose a quarterback who I still think has some juice in the tank that's capable with the right team around him. I'm not by any means going to put Joe Flacco in the top 10, top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, but I think you'd be hard pressed to not put him in the top 10. And who the hell doesn't want a top 10 quarterback in the NFL on their roster? Apparently the Ravens are one of them. So, good luck with this Jackson experiment. I'm not going to, condemn a kid's career, but I don't see the tools that it's going to take to be a talented quarterback. And I certainly don't see I see a lot of Jameis Winston qualities in him. So we'll see what that means. But I think the Ravens run is about to end. And then you got Suggs retiring, I believe, at the end of this year. The Ravens, they're going to replace the Cleveland Browns as the cellar dwellers for a long, long time. Because I don't see this franchise moving forward at all, in my humble opinion. And this game, I know it was only 23-16, but you just got the feeling that it died this weekend. And credit to Pittsburgh. And what a more fitting way to have the Ravens die is by the Steelers being the one to put the stake through the heart of their bitter rival.
Very eloquently put, Anthony.
Well, you're welcome.
I wouldn't put Flacco in the top 15 in my list, but I know we don't always agree on stuff. That's what makes our show great. James Conner came up running out of here like a beast, caught a touchdown pass. Roethlisberger was near flawless. On the road, you rarely see that. At 36 years old, he's reinventing himself as a different quarterback when he's not in Pittsburgh. And it's actually very fun to watch because the team can really make noise later on in the season, maybe even in the playoffs. But again, that defense is missing like a linebacker, and obviously we know Shazier is not coming back and walking through those doors anytime soon. Neither is Joey Porter or Troy Polamalu. So they have to play the hand that they're dealt. So they're going to have to outscore their opponents. And yeah, Baltimore put up a touchdown late, but the game really wasn't ever as close as the score indicated. Because once Pittsburgh got out there and got that lead, there really was no looking back. Baltimore is now on a bye. So John Harbaugh said that there's going to be conditioning done through Wednesday, and guys trying to get healthy, and then they're off until for a week. They've lost 3 in a row. Anthony, if you were head coach of the Ravens and you just lost 3 in a row ahead of your bye week, would you give them off, or would you have them come in, practice, and say, you know what, we got to get better type of thing, or do you want them to kind of refresh, recharge, and say, hey, you know what, take a few days off, go wherever you want, have fun, don't get in trouble, and meet back here on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week?
This is such okay. Let me start by saying this. You're an old team. I think the players may appreciate it. I personally would not. But let me tell you the case on why you might. Harbaugh knows he's done at the end of the year. So there's really no point in drilling the young players and killing them through a week of practice and giving them a hell week so they grow a genuine distaste for losing if you're not going to be coaching those guys next year. I know that sounds selfish, but you got to weigh the locker room. Would there be a mutiny if you had a practice? Is this a way to get the guys maybe galvanized behind you? It's a risk. I'm an old school coach. I personally would break this week down this way. You're off Monday. Tuesday's recovery day. Wednesday, we're going to do some conditioning. I'm going to give you Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off this week before the bye, the week of the bye week. But I'm sorry, Saturday, Sunday. But Friday, Thursday, and Friday, I'm going to use as a padded practice because you only get so many for the year. And I'm going to drill the 2 areas that I think the Ravens are struggling with. One on offense, one on defense. I would drill the short running game, and I would drill my pass defense in full pads with tackling as the only option. And I get these guys mentally prepared to fix the things you need to fix. It's really what the bye week should be for. Where are we weak? We don't have to prepare for anybody this time. We can just prepare for ourselves and fix our own problems. I would only do that because the Ravens are so old. If I didn't have an old team, then we'd have the padded practice on Thursday and Friday, and we'd have a conditioning practice in the morning on Wednesday, and in the afternoon, we'd have what I call an X's and O's practice, where you kind of go over some things that you need to clean up. And then you use those 2 padded practices to drill the 2 things that you want to work on. That's what I would do if I had an older team. And I would have a required come into the stadium, bring your family. We're going to watch the games on Sunday on the big Jumbotron and kind of bond together a little bit. Now, if I had guys come out to me and go, Coach, I'm going out of town. I'm going to see my mother-in-law, or my kids are going to see their grandparents. I'll obviously excuse them. But if you're in town, you're coming to the stadium, and we're watching it on the big screen. And we're going to watch some football this week, and we're just going to kind of bond together. But that's me. I'm an old school coach, very Joe Gibbs-esque. So I don't know what's going on there. But speaking of not knowing what's going on, the Detroit Lions offensive line. You might be asking, what offensive line? And the Vikings would be saying the one that didn't exist because we hit Matthew Stafford and sacked him 10 times. Look, if this is the Minnesota defense that we're going to see moving forward, the NFC just got a lot tougher. And you'd be an idiot to pick anybody to win the Super Bowl in the AFC. I don't care if it's the Patriots. I don't care if it's the Chiefs. They are not going to be able to beat the NFC. The NFC is loaded in talent. And the Vikings really stepped up and played a big game. Not the best game for Kirk Cousins, but it didn't need to be. I think there was some positives there, and it was good to see Dalvin Cook kind of get himself back going. So, big win for Minnesota, Eric. Take her away.
Yeah, thank you, Vikings, for the blueprint for the game upcoming against Detroit. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, right?
It really helped the Bears. Yeah, Stafford, a couple things to take away. Stafford didn't have a touchdown pass. They kicked 3 field goals. Adam Thielen had 22 yards receiving and a touchdown. Like, where'd the offense go? Yeah, I know there was a Latavius Murray touchdown, an Adam Thielen touchdown, and a return fumble for a touchdown. When Stafford tried to pitch, like, I was wondering what the heck he was trying to do. Like, not either not get hit or what, because that was a broken down play. And never should have let the ball out of his hand, if you ask me. Minnesota got a win at home as they should have. They kept pace. Realistically, they kept pace with the Bears because obviously they beat Detroit, and the Packers ended up losing in New England. So, Detroit still has a long way to go. I mean, I know you've been saying you like Patricia. This was a WTF moment for Detroit, but they seem to have quite a few of these throughout the season. And I don't know what it is about the Lions, but man, sometimes you just hope like you see a good year out of them, and you did a couple years ago, but they can't seem to sustain it. So, Stafford's not getting any younger. So I could see this team in a couple of years using the R word pretty quickly.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, my dad called, so we're gonna go through these pretty quick, guys. Personal matter that I'm dealing with, so I'll get to that in a minute. Speaking of WTF moments, I called it. I said if there was going to be an upset, Minnesota, the Lions could pull one off. I agree with everything you said on that, Eric. And look, the Redskins had it. I mean, this was a game you had no business losing, and it looked like they were playing the Saints all over again defensively. A lot of holes, a lot of mistakes. These are the kind of moments that make me not buy into Washington just yet. I'm not ready to crown them division champs. I'm not ready to give up on Philadelphia because the Skins still have to play them twice. And as long as Jay Gruden is the coach in Washington, this is what you're going to get if you're a Redskin fan. Inconsistency, terrible defeats, and at the end of the day, you're going to look at the whole thing and go, what in the frick are they doing? I mean, you don't run the ball when your defense isn't getting to the quarterback and stopping Atlanta. You lose your offensive line. I get that. So go screen game. Or better yet, build a better team in the offseason. Credit Atlanta. They won this game, but the Redskins look like garbage. And it was exactly the type of game that one can come to expect from Washington. And usually these come in bunches. So it just happened now. Look for the next 3 or 4 weeks to be really tough games for Washington, regardless of the opponent. I won't be surprised if they go into Tampa this week and get their pants beat off of them because they're that kind of team under Jay Gruden. Take it away.
Like you mentioned, give credit, all the credit to Atlanta in this game. They took Washington to the woodshed. And there's something wrong with Washington's defense when Julio Jones scores a touchdown. Hey, tip your hat to Julio Jones. He finally got in the end zone after what seems like 6 years.
Yeah.
Evan Coleman, have yourself a day, young man. Rushing, receiving, he was doing it all. He was Mr. Atlanta Falcon in this game. And I know Matt Ryan threw for 350 yards, but he threw for 350 quiet yards while getting the ball to Julio and even Ridley and Coleman as they broke a lot of tackles and went to the end zone. So, the Falcons need a win to keep up in the NFC South, and I mean they might be looking up for a while. But if they can put together some sort of winning streak and put pressure on Carolina and New Orleans and win those division games when they come up, don't count Atlanta out just yet. It's slim, I know, but man, Washington just looked like garbage.
Yeah. Look, maybe Houston was looking forward to the bye week. Maybe I was right. I didn't think in fact, the Texans shouldn't have won the game. So my statement of the Texans don't score 20, they're not going to win, was literally 6 inches to the right from coming true. Terrible miss kick at the end of the game. But at the end of the day, that's a game Denver should have won and Houston escaped. I never like winning a game due to a missed field goal. Unless it's a Super Bowl, I'll take it however I get it. But in the regular season, I think it raises more questions against you than it does in your favor. Sometimes you get those wins, though, and the gods smile on you, and they clearly smiled on Houston this week. I didn't think Houston deserved to win. I think it was a bad loss for Denver. I think it was a lucky win for Houston, but you know what? Lucky or not, they're 5-3 and they're running away with the division, or 6-3, whatever they are now. 6-3. They're 6-3. So you got to give credit where credit's due. 6-game win streak is nothing to snarl at, no matter how you get there.
Right, and tip your hat out to you, Anthony, because you called Demaryius Thomas early that Houston wanted to get to Demaryius Thomas and get him involved. 61 yards in the first quarter and then nothing from him since. Listen, Houston came out like gangbusters in the first half, and they put together a sizable lead. 1917, I don't know how sizable you think you can get, but when you're on the road and you get to 7 or 10 points or whatnot, it's sizable. Yeah, it's only one play until they're right back in it. But Houston came out, and then they took foot off the gas pedal. They played very conservative, and they still escaped with a win. So it's going to go on tape, and people are going to see that. But Houston is lucky to get away with that. Brandon McManus is typically money anywhere in Denver. I mean, it could be from 19 yards out to like 70 yards out because of the altitude. But 51-yard field goal, nothing to sneeze at. Still a difficult kick, no matter where you're at, no matter the elements or the altitude. But he, typically he makes those and he missed one. So Keenan kept him in the game, and DeAndre Hopkins is still a stud.
Yep. No
matter where he plays, he is just a beast.
Chargers at Seattle, big win for San Diego. Dang near blew it. Had no business blowing it. This was a really I'm confused on this one. I don't know how to take it. I don't know whether to give credit to Seattle on the comeback or really rip the Chargers for a poor performance at the end of that game, or maybe it's a little bit of both. Look, all I know is Seattle's coming off a loss. The Rams are coming off of a loss, and I think the Rams are going to be far more angry about their defeat than the Seahawks for a multitude of reasons. I don't think the Rams are going to have a problem this week against the Seahawks. Spoiler alert, I'm calling a blowout for the Rams. Putting that aside, I do think that Seattle showed why they have the problems they do. And going down the line, I think the Chargers showed exactly why they're not going to overtake Kansas City. They are a great wild card team. They will win their wild card game. They will lose at one of the divisional round bye winners. There's no doubt in my mind. Unless they shore up these stupid mistakes in key situations. Look, they got lucky. The guy dropped the ball. Simple as that. So that's all I'm going to say on the Chargers. Big win, but again, more questions than answers leaving that game, I feel.
I got this game. I watched this game. To our Chargers fan who listens to us, my apologies for picking the Seahawks. I should have known better. You know who you are. I thought, I honestly thought that was one of those games that the Seahawks could go in and win, and it was one of those moments for the Chargers where they typically have sometimes throughout the course of the season. Mm-hmm. And to me, actually, I don't think there's a lot of questions on the Chargers because their questions got answered on Monday. Okay? The reason why the game was close at the end was because they have a kicker who missed 2 extra points and a field goal. Mm-hmm. He never should have been an 8-point game.
No. Nope.
Okay. Credit Seattle for coming back and being within inches of a tying touchdown or a touchdown and a tying 2-point conversion, but the ball was slightly tipped by the Chargers defender, which got in the way of the Seattle receiver, and he couldn't get a great grip on the ball. That's
true. That is true. That was a great defensive play too. Yeah.
It was. But again, the Chargers should never have been in that situation to begin with. So bye-bye Caleb Sturgis, and they signed their kicker off the practice squad. I forget his name. I had it. But they don't have to worry about Sturgis. And Rivers was hot after Sturgis kept missing, and I don't blame him. Listen, when a kicker misses easy kicks like that, and I'm saying extra points are easy, no matter if you're from the 2-yard line or now it's a 33-yard extra point.
Yep.
listen, just kick it high and kick it over the defenders and kick it straight.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Not that difficult. Although I've never been a football field goal kicker before, so take my suggestion with a grain of salt.
There's enough kickers in the league that make that routinely. That's the point you're making.
Oh yeah. Gostkowski does. Tucker does. They don't have problems. Gostkowski missed an extra point within the last 2 years, which is his first, and Tucker even missed one this year, which actually ended up costing the Ravens the game.
Yeah.
But again, it's few and far between. So
certainly not 2 in one game. So.
Right.
Speaking of New England, Green Bay at New England. Interesting game here. 17-17 going into the fourth quarter. New England pulled away. This just proves my point. The Packers are not a playoff team this year. This is a team that needs to figure some things out. I don't know what else to say about Green Bay. And with New England, look, I'm not going to pound the drum for the Patriots here. You beat a team you should have beaten, a weak football team at that. And a team that was coming off of an emotional defeat. Again, Eric, I'm going to give you credit now and tip your hat. You called that this might be a Packer loss because of the emotional element of it, and that was clear because when they were tied 17-17 and then New England scored in the first one in the fourth quarter, you could just see that the Packers had shut down. They had nothing left to give, and I think that has a lot to do with what you were talking about. Credit New England, big win. At home, but it's a win you should have won. If you lost this game, I think it would have been a bigger question mark than beating a team you're supposed to beat at home that, quite frankly, you're superior to, with or without Gronkowski.
Yeah, and the game turned on the Aaron Jones fumble. Obviously that happens, and it just reminds you of the week before when Ty Montgomery fumbled coming out of the end zone. So, are the Packers now going to release Aaron Jones? I'm waiting for that transaction to happen either today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen, but whatever. And I'll throw another tip of the cap at you because you called that if Green Bay comes out and plays the defense that they played against the Rams against the Patriots, the Patriots would have a hard time. And the Patriots did. If you watch that first quarter, Tom Brady could not get a pass to one of his receivers to save his life.
Yeah.
But then injuries started to happen for Green Bay. Kevin King went out of the game. Blake Martinez went out of the game. Ended up coming back a few series later, but they were just never the same defense. And as soon as one of the Packers' secondary players went out of the game, it basically opened up Green Bay to play more of a 5-2 defense because they needed players to go after Brady, and Brady just tore him up with a touchdown pass to Josh Gordon, which was a thing of beauty. And then they did the flea flicker to Julian Edelman, who then threw it to James White. And if you watch that play set up where Edelman threw to White, it was a thing of beauty. Talk about the offensive linemen knowing exactly what they have to do, how far they can go before White catches the ball, and then go downfield and get in, not necessarily block, but get in the Packers defender's way. And it was such a thing of beauty. Just the way that they work together as one unit.
Yeah.
And that's why the Patriots are so successful, is because of plays like that. Like, you can throw all the gimmicky plays out there, but typically on something like that, you're going to have a holding, you're going to have a block in the back, you're going to have hands to the face, okay? Seriously, like, you can put that on any highlight film right there, and that's the thing of beauty. The only thing that didn't happen was White scoring, but he got in a few plays later. And, it was perfectly set up. Green Bay was not expecting it. They didn't know whether or not to go after Edelman in that scenario, and finally, after Edelman had all the time in the world, he finally threw it back to White. There was not even a Packer within 15 yards of him.
Yeah.
And half the team is lined up left with White just waiting for the pass, and the offensive linemen are like, all right, come on, man, time now, let's go.
Yeah. Listen, the last game that I want to cover, and I'm going to be quick with this one, I'm going to be honest, I didn't get a chance to watch it. I had something go down on a personal matter with my family, and I wasn't able to watch the game. I was too busy dealing with those things. So, Eric, I'm going to defer to you. I do know the Titans won. which doesn't bode well for Dallas moving forward. But go ahead and please be brief because I need to make a phone call.
All right, what Dallas did is they did the same thing that Houston did with Demaryius Thomas, and that was trying to get Amari Cooper involved early. And they did. They got him a pass for 11 yards really early on the first drive, and then try to force feed him a little bit the rest of the way, but really found him more in the second half. You credit to Marcus Mariota for hanging in there, not taking a bunch of sacks, learning from the Ravens game when he took 11 sacks and only had 10 completions, to step up in the pocket, hit some big third down throws, and also, let Dion Lewis and Derrick Henry do their thing on the ground. Dallas, on the other hand, they got a lot of work to do. Ezekiel Elliott, he had 50-plus yards rushing and 50-plus yards receiving. Amari Cooper got in the end zone. Dallas has a bunch of question marks. They might be still mathematically alive in the NFC East. They are. They're still searching for an identity. Jerry Jones has come out, and he has said that there's not a scenario where he would make an in-season coaching change. Well, Jerry Jones has made an in-season coaching change in the past. That was when Wade Phillips was the head coach.
Yeah, but he's saying not right now.
Because the players were like, we're not playing if he's still the head coach. So he was actually forced to make an in-season change. But listen, Jerry Jones, the GM, is getting in Jerry Jones, the owner's way. And Troy Aikman said it right. Troy Aikman says from the organization all the way down, from top to bottom, there needs to be big changes with the Cowboys. Coming from somebody who knows firsthand and has been through the Cowboys organization and played and won, he's got every right to say it, but he's also saying it from an analyst view as well, not just as a Cowboys hater or whatnot, because I'd rather hear something like that from him instead of him saying, oh, yeah, no, the Cowboys are fine. They don't have to do anything. No, yeah. Tell it exactly like it is. However, here's the problem. Here is the one problem. I've said it before. You've said it before, Anthony. It's that one person, you're not going to get hired and say, okay, well, you need to just handle all the owner stuff. I'll handle the GM stuff. It don't work like that in Dallas.
Nope.
Doesn't work like that. It might have been successful back in the early 90s when the Cowboys were winning, but times have changed. The game has evolved and changed, and you need more than one football mind in that room when you're trying to make
either that
on who to sign or who to play.
Either that, or you need to hire a coach like me that can win. I don't mean to toot my own horn. That can win a lot of different ways. And provided I'm allowed to give input on what would work best, that would be really all I would need, and then take the talent around me. There's a lot of things Dallas could do that they're not doing. I don't think they're utilizing Cole Beasley nearly enough. I don't think they're leaning on the running.
Not when you go to him twice in the fourth quarter and never beforehand.
I don't think they're utilizing their tight end nearly enough. I don't think they're utilizing play action pass or Ezekiel Elliott nearly enough with the defense that they have, because their defense isn't bad. So they are built to win, I dare say, because they're Cowboys, like the Redskins of old in the 90s and the 80s under Joe Gibbs, early 90s. But they're playing as if they're built for modern day football, and they just don't have those players. They got a good offensive line. They got a great running back. They got a good tight end. They got decent outside receivers that can be a threat if you can hide them, and you hide them through play action in the running game. But Dallas isn't doing any of that. So we'll see how that unfolds. I'm Anthony.
I'm Eric.
And horns up.
Bear down.
And go Rams!